Well, hey everybody, welcome to Profiling Evil's new series, Twisted Tales, a place where we unravel the fascinating crimes and challenges of history. And in this episode, we're going to gallop into the perilous world of the Pony Express, a daring enterprise that bridged the gap between the East and the West for a brief but unforgettable 18 months. While its riders were often celebrated as brave heroes, the story of the Pony Express is equally a tale of robberies, murders, and lawlessness. So saddle up, folks, and let's explore the twisted tale that shaped this icon of the Wild West. Hey, welcome to Profiling Evil, and thanks for joining us today on this episode of Twisted Tales. Today we're going to be talking about crimes along the infamous Pony Express. Now, some of you have written in and said I look a whole lot more relaxed when I'm out here in the woods. So I'm taking your advice, and I'm doing this one from along the Pony Express route. Luckily, I happen to have cabin property along the route, so I'm able to get out and enjoy the woods and then take care of some necessary work, like burning a whole bunch of dead wood that I've been pulling off of the property and through the trees that have come down over the summer. So, the route of the 1800s, the Pony Express, is what we're talking about. And as you saddle up, folks, take a minute, hit that like and subscribe button on your device, and please give us a thumbs up and share us with your friends and your contacts. And feel free to copy the link for this video and post it in your social media feeds. I'd really appreciate it. It helps us grow, and I think your friends would enjoy it as well. Now, in its heyday from April of 1860 to October of 1861, the Pony Express was a lifeline of communication across the rugged American frontier. It covered nearly 2,000 miles from St. Joseph, Missouri, all the way to the coast, Sacramento, California, where riders braved the elements, exhaustion, and unforgiving terrain. Yet their greatest challenge often came from other human beings, bandits, vigilantes, and Native American warriors determined to defend their lands. A little earlier, I flew my drone along the Pony Express Trail where some of those infamous ambushes, especially along and near Utah's Echo Canyon, happened. Confrontations that probably started in robbery and at times ended in murder are what we're going to talk about. Now, the Pony Express was a system of U.S. mail delivery by continuous horse and rider relays covering 2,000 miles of tough Wild West terrain. We're going to hit places like we're seeing here in this video as I shot this near my cabin, and this video that I took earlier today at one of the outposts along the southwest Wyoming border and Utah. So I want to start here in the Echo area because this was the second Pony Express contract station built in Utah. And so I thought it'd be a great place to start. In fact, it was actually built where this wrecker yard is, where these old abandoned cars are. This was the original spot. Echo Canyon is a natural conduit through the Wasatch Mountains, and it was used for thousands of years by wildlife and, of course, the Native Americans and people as they began migrating through the Rockies and the Great Basin. Now, I hope you can hear me over the snap of the fire, but what a great atmosphere to be in. Now, once discovered by mountain men in the early 1800s, this 24-mile passage, Echo Canyon, eventually became a thoroughfare for pack trains, commercial and immigrant wagon trains, 49er brigades, military columns, handcart processions, the Pony Express, the Overland Stage, and the Transcontinental Telegraph and Railroad. You know, the Donner Reed Party was the third immigrant wagon train to pass through the canyon. And today, this canyon remains a busy transportation corridor, as shown in this video that I shot this morning overlooking the area. We just had some fresh snow, and as you can see, we got it here at the cabin as well. But the canyon remains a busy transportation corridor occupied by I-80, the Union Pacific Railroad, and a segment of the old Lincoln Highway. That was the nation's first coast-to-coast automotive highway. This old automobile graveyard, again, where we started, is the actual site of the Pony Express station here in Echo. And it's really sad that it's now covered with junky cars and not somehow restored to its glory days. Now, during its 18 months of operation, the Pony Express reduced the time for messages to travel between the East Coast and the West Coast to about 10 days. That meant riders were going across the United States in 10 days on horseback. It became the West's most direct means of east-west communication before the first transcontinental telegraph was established. Remember that? It was established in October, 24th, I think, 1861. And it was vital for tying the new state of California with the rest of the United States. Well, despite a heavy government subsidy, the Pony Express was not a financial success, and it went into bankruptcy in just 18 months, especially when the faster telegraph service was established. Nevertheless, it demonstrated that a unified transcontinental system of communication could be established and operated year-round. Can you imagine riding a horse through this kind of country in this kind of weather? When replaced by the telegraph, the Pony Express quickly became romanticized, and it became a part of the folklore of the Old West. Its reliance on the ability and endurance of hardy riders, fast horses, was evident as you look at this terrain again, a signal of the individualism of frontier times. So I thought I'd venture out to the Hanging Rock Pony Express Station, also called Halfway Station, and from there on to a secondary Pony Express station. Now, nothing remains of these relay stations but a small marker on the side of the road, and it's pretty tough to get to in this kind of weather, but it really was cool. The Hanging Rock was just kind of a small natural bridge, and the area was an immigrant campground. Well, these Pony Express riders would each race a horse for about 10 miles, if they were lucky to have a horse just for that short a period of time, before switching out to a fresh horse, grabbing something to eat, filling their canteen, and heading out again. Each rider packed a canteen, a revolver, a rifle, and of course, the mail. Now keep in mind that the average speed of a horse and a rider was about 7 miles per hour. Now you might remember the name of Buffalo Bill Cody. He held the record for transit when he rode horses 322 miles in just 22 hours. He went through 21 horses on the trip, but for an hour straight, each horse ran as hard as it could run. Pony Express riders were easily identified by their size and their dress. Now think about this. In the interest of speed, careful consideration was given to the weight of the rider. A rider had to weigh less than 120 pounds. There was only 25 pounds of equipment that was allowed for each rider, along with the 4 mail pouches that were sewn onto this leather kind of a tarp or a saddle that threw across the physical saddle. Again, they had their light rifle and a Colt revolver, but eventually they even got rid of the rifles because they were too heavy. The riders wore bright red shirts and blue pants, and in the early days of the Express, they carried a small brass horn to signal their coming. When they discovered that the hoofbeats of those horses did the same thing, told everybody they were coming, they got rid of the horn and they just allowed them to do that. But here's something pretty cool. Each rider was issued a Bible to sustain their courage and their hardiness, something to make the ride through these potentially dangerous countryside landscapes, places filled with Native Americans who were wanting to hurt them, bandits, deadly blizzards, and murderous heat. Again, can you imagine riding in this kind of temperature without a whole lot of clothing on because you got to keep the weight light, and then having to do it in the summertime when the temperatures are over 100 degrees. Initially, it cost about $5 per half ounce of anything you were trying to move across the country. Within a year, commerce took over and the price dropped to a dollar per half ounce. But that still didn't help the 80 riders, the 184 Pony Express stations, and the 400 horses survive and stay in business. The Pony Express wasn't just a mail service though. This was one high-stakes gamble. Riders carried valuable items like cash, government dispatches, and of course letters from people like you and me if we could afford it. And that made these folks prime targets for criminals. Despite their courage, many riders fell to these kinds of perils along the route. So let's quickly explore a couple of those big crimes, like the case of the lost gold pouch in 1860. So somewhere along the Pony Express route, closer to Nevada, a rider was transporting $5,000 in gold, and he met his match. He was ambushed by outlaws. Now, the rider fled into a rocky canyon, but he was captured. The bandits tied him up to a tree, stole the gold, and escaped off into the sunset. Now, though this rider was eventually rescued, the treasure vanished. Many people speculate that it was buried out on the desert, and that has prompted a lot of people to go out and dig around, hoping that they might someday discover it. And then there was the ambush at the Sweetwater station in 1861. And this is where a rider was attacked up here in Wyoming by two armed bandits near, again, that Sweetwater station. Despite this rider's best efforts, remember, they had a pistol, 6 bullets, and a rifle. That old rifle and pistol probably ran out pretty darn quick. And despite his best efforts, the Pony Express rider was fatally shot. And these thieves, these killers, stole his pack. His body was discovered by settlers coming through the area a short time later, but it was a grim reminder of the risks that Pony Express riders faced. The killers in that particular case were never caught. So if you're looking for a case to kind of investigate, that might be a fun one. Now, this is Echo Canyon, and we're looking at it from the drone imagery that I shot. And I shot some of this a few weeks ago, some of it today in the snow. But I'd like to refer to this as the Pony Express Utah Crime Roads. In this video, I'm standing near the Pony Express Monument in Echo. And this is going to be actually Echo, another Twisted Tale town that I talk about in one of my next videos. But Echo Canyon is nestled in the Wasatch Mountains, and it was both a critical link to the Pony Express Trail and a hotspot for crime. Its narrow passages and towering cliffs made it an ideal ambush site for bandits and outlaws. So as we look at this drone imagery of the area and how I think it's just incredibly beautiful, you can kind of catch a glimpse of the 1860s advertising that was painted on the walls of the canyon, telling travelers where they might find lodging or something to eat. From the 1800s, it's still visible on the canyon walls today, so I hope you're enjoying this imagery. And please, consider picking up my book, Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. It's a story about my investigation into and the ultimate takedown of a religious cult that committed thousands of assaults against children. 12 people went to prison, and the self-proclaimed prophet died in prison. It's a story, though, about how the survivors rose above the horrors of abuse. The book explains why people join cults and how they often can't get out. So you can get Deceived or my book, She Knew No Fear, through Amazon or my website, profilingevil.com. And if you buy it through profilingevil.com, I'll ship the book anywhere in the United States for free. And as a special gift leading up to Christmas, if you want to buy the book for yourself or for someone on your Christmas gift list, I'll personalize the book before I ship it off. Now, the robbery at the Echo Canyon station was quite a notorious incident where a gang of outlaws raided the Echo Canyon relay station. And remember, that was that place that now is a bunch of junk cars sitting where the the station once stood. Under the cover of darkness, the bandits stole horses. They ransacked the supplies from the station, and they killed the station master who tried to resist them. The attackers disappeared into the canyon shadows, leaving the Pony Express scrambling to secure the route. Again, another great case if you're looking for one to solve. So make sure you're really digging into some of these if you like it. Maybe you'll just go down the rabbit hole on the Pony Express. Who knows? Echo Canyon wasn't just a hub for robberies. It was the stuff of nightmares for the riders that went through it. One gang used fallen trees to create roadblocks, forcing riders to dismount their horses before they'd rob them of all their possessions, including their boots. Ambushes often followed, with the outlaws either seizing the mail or leaving the riders for dead. Vigilante justice became a local response as the chaos in Echo Canyon intensified. In one famous story, it recounts how the settlers captured a suspected horse thief and summarily, in quick Western justice, hanged this guy without a trial. Now, I'm sure this sent a real sign of warning to criminals, but it also showed the lack of organized law enforcement on the Wild West frontier. Now, while most of the crimes were robberies, there were plenty of murders and mayhem along the trail. Criminal activity along the Pony Express route wasn't limited to just theft. Murder was all too common, with the riders often paying the ultimate price for their bravery. In fact, when you watch the video that I do on Echo, you might be really intrigued by the 7 skeletons that were dug up under that old saloon years later when it was torn to the ground. Well, we're going to talk about those murders, like the murder of William Hawkins, who was ambushed near Fort Bridger up in Wyoming here. His horse returned to the station, bloodied but riderless. The Pony Express rider's body was found days later. Again, another tragic casualty of the lawless frontier on the Pony Express. Over in Nevada's desolate Carson Sink, a young rider named Horace Brown was attacked by Shoshone warriors. Now, it later became known as the tragedy at Carson Sink. Struck by arrows, Brown barely survived, crawling to safety after hours of agony. Now, he was lucky. Many others weren't, dying in the lonely solitude of the cliffs and the hills in the Pony Express Trail. Now, this is really interesting too, because I don't know that there was robbery as an intent in that Shoshone Indian attack, or if it was something over the dispute with lands that were being taken from them. But in addition to the individual robberies and the gangs that were roaming the Wild West, these problems with the Native Americans were rising up and negatively impacting the influx of settlers and passerbys. Now again, outlaws were seeking profit, I believe, but the Native American resistance presented another formidable challenge. For tribes like the Paiute, the Pony Express symbolized more encroachment on their ancestral lands. That brewed and built and led to the Paiute War of 1860, which erupted when settlers clashed with the tribe over territory and resources. Several Pony Express stations were attacked, leaving employees dead and operations paralyzed. But these riders continued to brave these conflict zones with the constant fear of ambush, while the company, the Pony Express Company, struggled to maintain its routes amid all the violence that it was experiencing. Several of the relay stations, including one just near here, were completely destroyed during these conflicts. In fact, in that one, a station master was killed and the building was set ablaze, forcing riders to detour or risk further attack. And beyond the threat of crime, the Pony Express exacted a brutal toll on its participants, both the humans and the animals. Riders were pushed to their physical limits, often traveling more than 100 miles without any rest. 100 miles at 7 miles an hour. riding on a horse. Can you imagine how tiring that would have been? The horses fared even worse, driven to exhaustion or death in some cases, just in order to keep the mail moving. And on an episode which became known as the legendary 322-mile ride, I spoke about it earlier, one rider was forced to complete a staggering 322-mile journey when his replacements failed to show up to work. While he survived, again, many other riders succumbed to the harsh elements or they collapsed from sheer exhaustion. But being a Pony Express rider was really a coveted job. And the riders were a group of people that were actually promised a pretty good living, $125 a month. It was a princely sum in those days. In fact, that paycheck, I went back and kind of figured it out, equaled about $6,200 a month in today's money. That's $74,000 a year just for riding a horse. But the danger often outweighed the reward. And in my opinion, it certainly outweighed the reward. Many young men, some as young as 14 years old, sacrificed their health, and in some cases, their lives, just for the job. The company, again, was facing financial ruin. And when they went into financial ruin, it left families with little more than grief and unfulfilled promises. It really a sad state of affairs. Well, by October of 1861, the Transcontinental Telegraph replaced the Pony Express, rendering its services obsolete. And while it only lasted 18 months, the Pony Express left behind a legacy of courage, resilience, and a fair share of bloodshed. As we look at this video again, sites like Echo Canyon still echo with the stories of outlaws, vigilantes, and indomitable spirits of the Pony Express riders. You know, I think it's kind of interesting to consider that while dangerous, the Pony Express rider had a better likelihood of survival than the workers who were maintaining those isolated stations that supported the riders. These stopover sites, if you think about it, were filled with supplies, fresh horses, and at times money and goods. And all of that meant that they were targeted quite often by criminals. Frankly, it was easier for the criminal to sneak up and overtake the 2 or 3 workers in the outpost than catch those Pony Express riders who were experts on horseback, and they were masters at quickly moving across the Wild West terrain. The Pony Express might be romanticized today, I don't know, but its real history is a tapestry of danger, crime, and survival. From the ambushes that occurred in places like this, Echo Canyon, to the defiance of young riders like William Hawkins or Horace Brown, the tales of the Pony Express reveal the harsh realities of the American frontier. And with that Transcontinental Telegraph taking care of the messaging going across, there was still a concern about how to get bigger things across the country. And the Pony Express Trail became a trail for stagecoaches, and many of those were robbed as well. In fact, in another dark chapter of the Pony Express Trail, there was the Bullion Bend robbery. It was a robbery and a murder that became a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked along this trail. In 1864, this was about 2 years after the Pony Express Trail had come to an end as far as the riders, a stagecoach was going along at the height of the Civil War. There were 2 Confederate sympathizers, a guy named Jim Henry and another named John Squires, and they masterminded a plot to fund the Confederate cause by robbing stagecoaches. So disguised as Union soldiers, they ambushed the stagecoach near Bullion Bend. There was a sharp turn in the rugged Sierra Nevadas along the Pony Express Trail, and they used that for their trap. The stagecoach was laden with gold bullion, precisely what the thieves aimed to seize for their clandestine mission. I mean, you think about it, gold was the thing that Adolf Hitler went after when he was trying to fund his armies. Well, the robbery turned violent when the coach's armed guards resisted. One was a deputy sheriff. A fierce skirmish ensued, resulting in the murder of the deputy sheriff. The assailants successfully fled with $50,000 worth of gold bullion, an enormous sum of money at that time. In fact, that money is worth nearly $1 million today. I think $966,000. Can you imagine that, traveling and glumping along in a stagecoach? Well, their daring crime spread fear across the trail, and it highlighted the lawlessness that could erupt in remote areas far from the protections of organized government. The killers and the robbers were captured, tried, and convicted. Some served hard time in prison, while at least one was tried and then executed by hanging. The Bullion Bend robbery remains a notorious episode in the history of the Pony Express Trail, capturing the clash between ambition and justice in a land fraught with opportunity and peril. Today, the story serves as a somber reminder of the human cost associated with that westward expansion that occurred in the United States in the early days, and the complex moral landscape of this Civil War era America. And I'm using this term again, the legacy of the Pony Express is romanticized. But think about those robberies, the murders, and events like the Bullion Bend robbery. These shed a light on the darker side of this historic route, where the promise of fortune was often overshadowed by violence and greed. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed this twisted tale on the Pony Express Trail. Please, folks, take a moment and put your comments down below. And if you'd like, take a moment and weigh in on each other's comments. I love hearing what you have to say. And again, I hope you'll take time to read each other's comments and respond to them. Hey, thanks for joining us on Profiling Evil's Twisted Tales. If you enjoyed this journey into history's darkest corners, don't forget to hit the like, comment, and subscribe buttons. And remember that you can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like audio podcasts, folks, check out Profiling Evil Podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. And while you're at it, check out Profiling Evil's website at profilingevil.com, a place where you can check out our resources like our story maps or our new unsolved homicides or missing persons social map. It's a place where you can enter in crimes from your own community. So thanks again. And from the mountains in Utah and a fire that seems to be burning down, we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.